Welcome again to Sid Caudle, and we're going to talk, of course, about the wonderful Sir Keir. And I'm getting probably more bullshit than I've ever been because I know he's got a knighthood, and I'm quite happy to say hello, Sir Keir. But on the other hand, I'm not because knighthoods have to be earned, not presented as a normal gift, golden handshake, call it what you will, for working for Her Majesty's government. And the number of sirs that come out of that hot potch of governmental blob we're going to talk about. But before we do that, Keir, has been guilty of the Guinness Book of Records of U-turning 8 times, and he's not been in power for 12 months yet. I mean, one U-turn would have killed most people off. So he's got to be congratulated, Sid.
Okay. Well, you see, when this government first got elected, I said they're in a state of confusion because they're not implementing their manifesto and they don't actually really know what they're doing. Because what should have happened was as soon as they got elected, they said, right, we're now going to implement our manifesto. These are the platform on which we got elected. Whatever our manifesto said is what we're going to do. That's what they should have done. But instead of that, you see, in their manifesto, for instance, it said that we're going to raise taxes by approximately 9 billion. We're going to put VAT on private school fees, and any more money, it said, will come from existing budgets. That's what they said. Now, as soon as they got elected, they threw that out the window. They increased national insurance, which had actually vowed we will not increase national insurance during the campaign. They increased that. And they cut the winter fuel allowance. They got rid of the winter fuel allowance. That wasn't in the manifesto. And they started doing loads of things that weren't in the manifesto. Then, on the other hand, they started increasing these quangos. And the total, they set up 28 new quangos. Now, some of them were in the manifesto, like Great British Energy, but they weren't costed in the manifesto, interestingly enough. So, they set up these 28 new quangos, and the total cost of quangos has gone up from 265 billion to 353 billion. That's an 88 billion increase, which is phenomenal. Now, it's interesting. This week, we've been told that Keir Starmer is going to U-turn on welfare cuts. And these welfare cuts were going to save 5.3 billion. But 5.3 billion is nothing compared to the 88 billion they've increased quangos by. And just one quango, Great British Energy, they're spending 8.3 billion on. And by the way, out of this 28 new quangos, 7 of them are environment quangos. So it's all part of their net zero campaign. So if they ditched the net zero campaign, if they ditched Great British Energy, we certainly wouldn't need any welfare cuts, and we'd be saving enormous amounts of money. So that's where the problem is, and the fact that Keir Starmer has U-turned on welfare cuts, I think is a good thing. But what he now needs to do is to U-turn on quangos, and quickly and drastically.
Lots of people agreeing with you, Sid. We've got a situation, of course, with Keir Starmer that he came in and promised and promised and promised. This government surely is the most incompetent. I'll illustrate it. Let's go to HS2, our friend HS2. Now, this, don't forget, was brought in by Gordon Brown in an illusion or delusion, call it what you might be. But the essence of it was to bring the North and South close together. But anybody knows, looking at the geography of Britain, it's not like Spain or France when fast trains do work big distances. Now, the big centres of Manchester, Liverpool, London and Birmingham, they're just, round the corner compared with most of the rest of the continent. And it's come down now to 100, down, up to 100 billion pounds it's going to cost. And now they want to get out of it. Well, too late and too little. The problems are vast and people don't realize what's been going on. But I tell you what, or who realize, and that's the lawyers, that's the politicians, and people that give delusionary quotes and fraudulent quotes for work that's already been undertaken. It's enormous, the fraud involved here. Let's look at some facts as well, Sid, about HS2. Would you believe the bat tunnel? Now, we think of more about our bats than housing the homeless and putting old people in warm homes. £100 million, the bat tunnel. And that's diabolical. Who won't spend £100 million to save bats going a roundabout route through a forest or by the side of a forest? They've done it all their lives. And the other astonishing accounts that are coming out at the moment, would you believe, last year we spent £100 million getting people stuck to railway lines in tunnels, out of the aforementioned tunnels, the usual suspects, of course, protesting about nothing, getting rid of criminals only to release them once again. It's madness. You couldn't write the script.
Yes. Now, as far as HS2 is concerned, I agree with you that that is the wrong project. And if people don't understand, you see, the thing is, in Spain and France, as you say, they've got a lot of countryside, whereas building a railway between here and Birmingham is going through a lot of urban areas, so they're having to build a lot of tunnels. Now, what you're saying about bats is obviously right. It's just ridiculous having to build £100 million tunnel to save some bats. But we do have fairly strict planning rules in this country, and so they have to go through a planning process. And at the end of the planning process is a planning inspector who can have a planning inquiry. And that's sometimes why all these projects cost so much, because they have to go all these planning inquiries before they can even start the project. And of course, if you've just got open countryside, as you've got much more in Spain and France, then it makes the whole process very much easier. So the end result of these planning inquiries is okay, well, we'll have a tunnel. There's an enormous amount of tunnels having to be built for this HS2 line, and that's why it's become so expensive compared with the original plan. So you're right. I mean, I don't think this is the right project. The right project, we believe, is to build a new airport in the Thames Estuary, which was what Boris Johnson wanted when he was mayor of London. It was actually called the Boris Island, and a very similar airport has been built in Hong Kong in the water. So we know we can build an airport in the water. There's no question about that. It would be expensive. The transport links to the airport are what will be expensive, not building it. Building it will actually be quite cheap. Comparatively, what we're talking about 100 billion for the HS2, but building the transport links to it would take a lot of work, but bit by bit we could do it. And if we had a new airport built in the Thames Estuary, well, we could get rid of Heathrow. Heathrow could become a local airport. That's very much in an urban area. You'd be flying in across the water, so you could be flying in during the night, whereas Heathrow you can't use during the night. And Britain needs a major hub airport. I mean, you could literally have 6 runways in a new airport in the Thames Estuary. So it would last for centuries. Whereas Heathrow, even if they build a new terminal, it could probably only be enough for 50 years, and then they'd be looking at another new runway needed for Heathrow. And in order to build a new runway at Heathrow, they've got to bridge the M25. They've got to demolish a whole load of villages. I mean, it's wrong, frankly, doing that, and that is the right solution. And to be spending billions on a new airport in the Thames Estuary will bring in enormous amount of wealth to the country. So it will be a project that will be really worthwhile. HS2 isn't a project that's really worthwhile, I'm afraid. That's the reality of it. And and you're right to bring attention to that.
Let's build a good railway between Liverpool and Hull, Transpennine. That will bring so many jobs and so much help
Yeah,
to the north. But
that is difficult, of course, because like you say, it's Transpennine, so you're going through some very difficult terrain. But yeah, I mean, we do need improved links between Lancashire and Yorkshire. Yes.
we're going to move on to the Trump bomb. Now, that's twofold. The bomb, of course, being a missile that can drill down, bomb its way down before the big bomb explodes and gets rid of nasties well below the ground. And Trump deployed it. He called their bluff. He became known as the Tomorrow Man, as it were. Plenty of talk, no action. Well, he's now Action Man. And it appears to work. Well, on one side of the political fence, it does. The other side, and this is very telling. Oh, well, we saw them. We've got pictures of lorries taking this wretched enriched uranium from the site and all sorts. Oh, he's done nothing. Well, that's all right until you look where the sources of these negative statements come from. And it's the Democrats, it's the left again. So do look at your news, but see where it comes from. And they're still at it, Sid.
Yes, it was very interesting that before the attacks, they were saying there's no evidence that Iran has got a nuclear program. We haven't got any evidence at all. So there's no need to be bombing them. It's all perfectly peaceful, which frankly was nonsense because the original Iran agreement was that they weren't allowed to enrich uranium above 3.2%, which was all that's needed for a for nuclear energy program. But they've actually enriched in program it up to 60%, which it needs to be 90% for weapons grade. So they were almost at weapons grade, and they were obviously enriching uranium way beyond what was needed for a peaceful program. So that was obviously false. But after the bombing, they said, "Oh, there's not been much damage to the nuclear program. They've only set it back a few months." So, wait a minute. You were actually saying there was no nuclear program. Now you're saying that the bombing hasn't been very effective. They've only just set the program back a few months. So, which is true. Both these were coming from the CIA. So at one point the CIA is telling us there's no nuclear weapons program, and then the CIA is telling us that there's not been much damage to the program. I mean, the actual evidence they were presenting was contradictory. And like you say, the whole aim of it was to undermine Trump, was to basically, first of all, to say you mustn't bomb Iran, and in the next breath to say, oh, you're not being very effective. We know actually it was very effective because we've actually had somebody from Iran on Al Jazeera TV, which is basically their TV, saying that Iran's nuclear program has been, in quotes, severely damaged. So if they're saying their program has been severely damaged, we know it has been. And I know the Ayatollah today has come out and said, "Oh, there's not much damage at all," but he's lying. He's very, very clearly lying, and he said that for domestic consumption. And by the way, we've also heard today that Iran is clamping down very severely on all dissent and arresting anyone who is against the regime. So in my view, they've lost all moral authority. They've got to go, and they've got to go very quickly. This Iranian regime is a terrorist regime, and must leave, must go.
Yeah, well, we've got a ceasefire. How permanent that is and how effective that is, time will tell. So Trump said, "We've got you. Don't move out of your village, leader of the nation, because we know exactly where you'll finish up and we can take you out at any time." Well, in one sense, that's horrible thinking, but clearly it can be done in this day and age. And the other thing that we've got to bear in mind is that now we've got the ceasefire, Iran has agreed to this. Now, they would not agree to this unless they were in deep, deep trouble. They know this was the only way out that they can survive. So the deal's been done between Netanyahu and his mob. Heavily criticised Netanyahu, but maybe there'll be less criticism of him now. And at least we've got this ceasefire. Will it last, Sid?
Interestingly enough, I think the answer to that is probably yes. Now, from a spiritual point of view, there's a possibility that we're now entering what is talked about in Ezekiel 38, verse 14, because it talks there about the land of Gog invading Israel when they're dwelling in secure borders. Now, up to now, Israel hasn't been dwelling in secure borders. They've had these enemies all around them, Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, as well as Iran. And of course, Hamas has been regularly shooting missiles into Israel. So these haven't been secure borders. But Trump actually said that this ceasefire is going to last forever. That's what he said. It's going to last forever. There's not going to be any more fighting. Now, if that's true, then Israel will be dwelling in secure borders for the first time in its existence. So there's a possibility that this week we've now entered into a whole new realm of prophecy for Israel. And I actually believe that it's quite possible we have entered this new realm because we're coming to the end times. Everyone agrees we're coming to the end times. And this is one prophecy that's not yet been fulfilled. It could well be this week that that prophecy is being fulfilled.
Interesting thoughts. We're going back to our first item. And I'm pinning something again to the masts. You said 2 months ago, I remember it plainly, that the only way to get rid of this government before its full term was for the revolting backbenchers of Labour to do something. Well, they've revolted earlier than we both thought, I think. And who knows what the future lies. Once they get their own way, they like power. But let's not base this on altruism. It ain't. All the Labour MPs want is to safeguard their seat at the next election. They're not doing it for any moral purpose. Let's be honest about it, but for whatever reason, it may get rid of Keir Starmer earlier than we thought.
I don't think that's quite right. I mean, obviously, Labour MPs are concerned about their seats, but I think the left-wing Labour MPs do sincerely believe that welfare benefits should not be cut, as indeed I do. So to that extent, it is a moral crusade. Now, the problem that Keir Starmer has got is that, like you say earlier, he's now done 8 U-turns. And he's U-turned on winter fuel payments, at least to a degree, because they're saying they're going to go now to 70%, where previously they were going to go to 0%, or very few, sorry, I should say only the people on benefits. So he's U-turned on that. He's now U-turned on welfare. And you see, what happens then is that people on the left of Labour that know full well they're not going to be in government because there's a lot of Labour MPs that want to be in government and are basically told you've got to toe the line. If you don't toe the line, then you'll never be given a post, a government post. And if people don't know, there's roughly about 80 MPs on the government side that are in government posts. And if you're in a government post, then you have to follow whatever the government says. You can't rebel. So, but if you're not in a government post and you've got no hope of ever being in a government post, then it doesn't matter if you rebel. The only weapon that they've got is that, well, we won't let you be a Labour MP at the next election if you rebel, which has already happened to a few. But up to now, all we've had is very isolated rebellions, maybe 5 or 6 MPs that have voted against the government and they've lost the whip as a result. So they could do that to 5 or 6. They can't do that to 120. They can't say to 120 MPs, you're going to lose the whip. So they've basically got no say over them. Now, it's interestingly enough, when the general election happened, which was last July, I was looking at this result and I said, God, why have you allowed the Labour Party to get this massive majority? And the Lord actually said to me, this majority will be a snare to them. So it's happening. You see, if you only have a small majority, you have to have strict discipline, because if you don't have strict discipline, then the government will lose votes. And they can say, oh, by voting against us, you're just helping the Tories. When you've got a big majority like this, I mean, you've got about 460 or so Labour MPs and only 120 Conservative MPs, and then there's another 70 or so Liberal Democrat MPs that have really only got their seats because of a deal that they did with the Labour Party, not to fight in those seats where the Liberals were fighting. They've got a massive majority in Parliament. So there's no argument that, if you vote against us, you'll be helping the Tories. So there's no effective way in which the Whips can bring these MPs into line. That's the reality of it, and that's what we're seeing. So,
well, Sid, in all this, let's also not ignore the proverbial elephant in the room, because there is one. And I, for one, when I see people, politicians mainly, being interviewed, why don't they ask that question? And the question being is that you've got a situation here that is overlooked, let's say, and let's be kind. We need immigrants to come in to fill job positions in home care or nuclear, fusion, experts, whatever. But nobody says, hang on, do we need more immigration? Let's stop it like other countries 100% have stopped it. But what's the problem? Well, the 18 to 24-year-olds is the problem. Stop paying them all the money that we do to stay at home and watch Netflix. Get them out, withdraw their benefits, get them to do the jobs. They've got to learn how to work before they get a career. And there's no work ethic there. There will be if you stopped everything.
well, you're right in the sense that unemployment is going up, and it's now gone up to something like 5%. So that means that there is obviously spare capacity in the workforce. So and also, we're moving into a realm of artificial intelligence, and there's more and more jobs going to be done by machines. That's the reality of it. So obviously, there's some jobs that can't be done by machines, and maybe caring is one. But it's beauty care would be another. I mean, you can't go to a beauty salon and expect some machine to do your nails. I mean, it's not going to happen. But there's a lot of civil service admin type roles that can be done by machines and will be. So the number of people employed by government should be going down. It should be going down drastically as we become more and more mechanized. Now, the extent to which that isn't happening is to the extent to which they're not actually getting to grips with the problem as they should be. But you're quite right. We don't need a lot more immigrants in order to run the country. We should be running the country with a lot fewer people, not more people.
And dare I say that if you're at work, you can't work if you've got 2-inch long nails. So that probably solves another problem. At a stroke. We'll move on before I get shouted at. I tell you what, London's come in for a lot of criticism since the reign of another Sir, again, in my humble opinion, not gained by altruistic tendencies, helping the poor, charitable wise. No, you get it because the powers that be want to give it to you. Now, the situation of, as an example, graffiti throughout the country, but especially in London, on the trains, it's incredible. Now, this is a criminal act, and we sort of sit back and say, oh, that's Banksy for the future. No, it's not. It's horrible, rubbish graffiti. The state of the toilets, the smell of urine, the smell of marijuana, the smell of the rubbish in the streets not cleaned up. London is not what it used to be. It's all right walking along the embankment where you might get birds singing, the river flowing by. Not that you can do anything with it, it's that mucky still. But it's not the reality of London. It's awful. It's full of feral youths. And if you want to guard your life, you better give them the telephone that they want. Don't try and stop them as they whiz by on their scooters and bikes to take it off you at will. It's a mess, Sid.
Yes. Now, before I address that issue, I just want to address the honours issue since you raised it twice now. Now, what people need to know is that the honours system actually comes from the political parties. So according to how many MPs you got in the House of Commons, it's according to how many people you are able to nominate for honours. So because the Labour Party now have a very large majority, they can make a lot of nominations for honours. And that's why Sadiq Khan has been nominated for an honour, because they've got to give them to somebody. So he's got it from the Labour Party. He's not actually got it from the monarch at all. And I know because I myself benefited from the system, in the sense that it was when I was a Conservative councillor, or when I just ceased being a Conservative councillor, that I was actually nominated by the Conservative Party for the MBE. It wasn't, the monarch didn't know me at all, and nobody in the palace knew me at all. But the Conservative Party did know me. They nominated me, and that's why I got it. And that's why you find, there's a lot of MPs in the House of Commons are knighted. There's a lot of sirs around. Now, there are other people that are nominated for sports and such like, but even they can be sometimes nominated by a political party because the political party wants to do favour with sports people. I mean, I'm very pleased that David Beckham has finally being knighted. I mean, I think he absolutely deserves it. His knighthood may come direct from the monarchy, because the monarchy do also nominate some people, but the majority of them come from the political parties. So people need to know that. And I actually don't believe it's a very good system. Now, the other thing is,
Still use it, Sid.
What?
Your MBE, do you still use it at the end of your name, letters, etc.?
Well, I do, yes. When I want to, when I do it, I use it in politics. Funny enough, when I first got it, I got it in 1989. I didn't use it at all. But then when I started to run my own company, which was in 1996, 1997. Then I did start using it because it gave me status, if you like, as running my own business. I was wanting to give people financial advice. I was saying, I'm Sidney Caudle MBE offering you financial advice. It gave me some status because I didn't have a big company behind me. Prior to that, I worked for the Prudential. So I was a representative of the Prudential. So the status was I was from the Prudential. Suddenly now I'm running my own company, so I didn't have that status. But having the MBE suddenly gave customers confidence to do business with me because he was a man of status. So I did that, and also I use it now as leader of the Christian People's Alliance because I think it gives the party some status that their leader has got an MBE. So it's like, this isn't just anybody that, we got in from the streets. This is somebody who's been honoured by the Queen in my case. So it gives the party a bit of status, having an MBE. So I do use it, for instance, on the manifesto and in certain emails I send out. If I want to impress somebody, when I send out an email, I'll put Sid Caudle MBE, leader Christian People's Alliance. So I do use it, yes, in that regard.
That's interesting, Sid. I suppose one day I'll be using my Spanish title. And I have one, strangely, And there we go. That's another story. We'll move
congratulations.
on. Thank you very much. Yes. Secondly, we must mention in all the melee, the collateral damage, I'm going to call it, of our state in our state. Morrison's have announced this week as an example. You're going to get back to work. We're not making the margins we should do, it's told to its staff. Get back to work. No more of this 3-day nonsense. You're going to work 5 days a week. We don't want to get go bump, as other companies can easily do. They might make a lot of money in a good year, but supermarkets are working on very fine margins. Back to work, which we all know. We've been hoodwinked, Sid, in my opinion, about this 3-day week. When you look at the latest figures coming out, it's caused more mental illness than you believe. And
Yeah.
the number of people actually going back, announcing to their friends saying, "Oh, I'm going back to work." Well, they've been 3 days at home, 2 days back to work. You need to get out there. You need to have conversation. You need to have friendships, not stay in your house where you can become almost agoraphobic, and not want to go out eventually. I suppose in the extreme circumstance, it could be like prison. Lots of mental health in prisons. But there's one of the collateral damages. The other one is from our big accountancy firms. They make millions, if not billions. And they're going to recruit 20% less from the high-flying universities. They've got A1 to do the jobs of the early trainees would normally do. That's interesting. They're cutting back. So things are happening everywhere because of where we are. Maybe good will come about. But this 3-day working, as we have found, as I have found in particular, trying to get information from any government department is a nonsense. Oh, I can't tell you that, sir. Well, you could, I say, if you were back to work and you would go to your line manager and say, "Oh, this is a difficult problem. How do I handle it?" And I could hear from you the same day instead of, "Oh, we'll write an email to you." That never arrives in many things. So it's end of that, I hope. It's bad for you as an individual, certainly bad for the efficiency of the country. Get back to work. But the people that are still getting away with it are our civil service. They're reveling in it. And they're still working, HMRC. Oh, no, I don't want them to go back to work. None of us do. We don't want to pay any more tax, do we? But the rest of them are just working on 2 cylinders. They should be on 4 or 6. You can't get them back to work. Oh, no, we've got a strong union. We've got a strong pension. 2/3 of the time, they're not working, the recent figures tell us. Oh, come on.
Okay, well, I've got a couple of things to say there. The first is it does depend on what stage of life you're at. I mean, I've got 2 daughters who are actually working for the civil service, and they've had children. And when they've had children, they've gone back 2 or 3 days, and sometimes they're working from home. And as the children get a bit older, they can do more hours. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that process. I think it's actually a good process in a sense. But you see, what's wrong, obviously, is if people at the beginning of their working life, they've got no reason why they need to be at home, and just being lazy and not being fully committed. So the other thing I would say is that, generally speaking, the amount of hours you have to put in the private sector is much more than in the public sector. My experience myself, plus the experience I've got from talking to my daughters, is that when they've been working in the private sector, they've been expected to work 70 or 80 hours a week, doing a lot of hours, even when, in their own time, if you like, working probably all day Saturday, as well as working Monday to Friday. But in the public sector, you've got a lot longer holidays. It's a lot easier to work fewer hours. And like you say, the unions are fighting for pay, even though you're working few hours. And a lot of the time, a lot of these jobs aren't even needed anyway. In the private sector, you can find somebody might be doing 3 jobs, because the company is desperate to try and cut costs in order to compete. In the public sector, they're not bothered. In the public sector, it's, we'll just employ as many people as we like. It's only the government that's paying. And the end result is what we're now finding. the cost of the civil service is going up enormously. The cost of quangos are going up enormously. We're going into massive deficit. Nothing's under control. Everything's completely out of control. That's the reality of it.
Going back to more reality, Sid, the actual figures, I've seen a list of every government department and who's doing the work. The average is, as I said before, literally 2/3 of them are still on 3 days a week. That's terrible by department. The only department that gets 100%, 10 out of 10, I like this one, Net Zero department. They're working full time already, 5 days a week minimum. That's interesting, isn't it? You can draw what conclusions you like out of that one.
Yes, I mean we're spending far, far too much on the whole net zero issue, and it's just it's just mad, frankly. And as I said earlier, I mean the fact is that we set up 28 new quangos, 7 of them are environment quangos, and they're all aimed at net zero, and it's a they're political projects. They're not economic projects. They're not projects that are going to benefit the country. So yeah.
Yes. Well, listen, while we're on the subject of civil servants, etc., I'm going to mention a name to you that you're not going to like. Dominic Cummings. Now, you've not got very high regard for this chappie. A lot of people haven't. But I tell you what a revelatory story he came up with last weekend. Magnificent. Some of the truths were coming out here. One of them was about the civil service. It is alleged, actually, that Cummings invented the word blob, and he should know. He's been at the centre of it. And he's been as delightfully kind as to say they are in a terrible mess. We can't go on like this till 2029 to have a change of power. These people are bozos.
Yeah. No, I mean, as far as Dominic Cummings is concerned, I mean, I respected him for his slogan, which was "Get Brexit Done," which was very effective. But I think after he helped the Conservatives win the 2019 election overwhelmingly, because he wasn't bound to happen, the power went to his head, frankly, and he started thinking he was more powerful than the Prime Minister, and what he's doing now, I've got no time for whatsoever, frankly.
Well, he's up to all sorts. We'll go on to that in a minute, but I must say that he was asked in the interview what he thought of the possibility of Nigel being the next Prime Minister. Now, he's had a big fallout with Nigel, several along the way, but whether he's healing this or trying to heal it, he says, yes, that's a possibility. So there we are. But looking at the poll that's come out this last 24 hours, the serious poll really drilled down to lots of things. This one, the amount of seats that Farage is going to finish up with is immense. And people are urging him, not right away, Sid, but they're urging him to make sure that he's got overall majority. Pal up with the Tories.
Yeah, well, you see, what Nigel Farage needs to do, which is it's happening, but it's probably happening slowly, is to really get to grips with their manifesto and to make sure he has in place a serious programme for government, because his manifesto will come under challenge. I mean, the Labour Party have already tried to challenge it and make out, that his economic policies are basically Liz Truss too, which has an element of truth to them. But you see, the way the reform needs to counter that is by basically saying what I'm saying about quangos. This is how we're going to save the money. Yes, we are going to raise tax thresholds. Yes, we are going to cap VAT. Yes, we are going to introduce a 10% tax threshold. But we're going to pay for it all by cutting quangos. And you've increased quangos by 88 billion. We're going to get rid of that. We were spending too much anyway. 265 billion was much too much. We're going to cut that back by 100 billion. We're going to get rid of all the social requirements for government contracts, which can save 39 billion if we get rid of, according to the Adam Smith Institute. This is how we're going to save money. Now, they need to have these serious policies in place They need to be able to say which quangos we're going to cut. They need to be able to say which quangos we're going to reduce their budgets, how they're going to do it, how they're going to run the services when they got rid of the quangos. Or you see, the Adam Smith Institute said that we got 27 health quangos. We only need 7, so that we can get rid of 20. Now, Reform need to be able to say, right, we're going to cut the health quangos. We're going to have 7, not 27. These are the 7 we're going to have. This is how they're going to function. And they've got to be ready from the day they get elected to get in and implement their manifesto. So that's where they need to be. Now, see, if they don't do that work, which needs to be done now, frankly, if they don't do that work and they just continue making policy up on the hoof, changing their policies as they go along, which is basically what the Labour Party's been doing, then they're going to have no more credibility than the Labour Party, and it's all going to come unstuck. So, you know, that's what they need to do, and they need to do it urgently. If they do the work, if they do the work effectively and have a very clear manifesto in place, then I see no reason whatsoever why they shouldn't get an overall majority and be the next government.
Sticking with the theme a little bit and merging it with the boat situation, which makes Britain look like the laughing stock of the world. You've got Dominic actually saying what he would do. Well, a bit drastic, some people think. It's very Trumpish. ECHR out, number 1. A lot of people agree with that one. Royal Navy with their boats destroying the boats of people coming over. These real baddies, the gang leaders, send in our special forces, take them out, literally by either arresting them and putting them in jail or killing them in extreme circumstances. It would work, he says. I think it would work.
Well, I think that's ridiculous. I think the Rwanda scheme was the right approach, frankly. And the only reason it was stopped was because of, like you say, the European Court of Human Rights. The courts were basically saying, oh no, sorry, these people have got human rights, and because they've got human rights, they've got human right to come to this country if they want to. They have to be protected. And that was the problem. You see, if you take away the human rights and you basically say, no, these people are coming here illegally, they have no right to come to the UK, we're going to send them to Rwanda for processing, and if they are genuinely in danger, then they'll be able to stay in a safe country, and we'll look and see what is the most appropriate safe country for them to stay in. If they're not in danger, then they can go back to whatever country they've come from, because they don't have any right to go and live in another country and not work in that country or not have some reason to go there. You see, actually what's going on, which most people haven't got to grips with at all, is the simple fact that it is Christians, by and large, around the world that are being persecuted. 353 million, it's estimated, Christians are being persecuted. So their lives, in many cases, are in danger. And especially places like northern Nigeria, they're actually being killed. But in other countries, there's churches being torched and pastors being arrested and so on and so forth. But it's not Christians that are coming over to these countries in the boats. I mean, if it was Christians that were coming over from northern Nigeria where they're being persecuted, then you could say, we've got to care for these people because they're fleeing and they're being persecuted. But it's not. And interestingly enough, we even had a case where somebody in Pakistan, whose life was in serious danger because of the way the Pakistani authorities were behaving towards some Christians, and the British government said, no, we're not allowing them to come to this country. And it was just ridiculous because they needed a safe place to come to. But the people coming over are almost entirely Muslims. And this was highlighted actually, but at one point, by the fact that they were demanding somewhere to pray when they came over. And they were actually deploring the fact that they weren't given their rights, you know, which they as should have as Muslims. And it's like these were illegal immigrants coming to this country demanding rights. So we know full well these aren't people that are fleeing persecution. What's going on is that this is a deliberate attempt to make the West more Islamic. And that is the process that's going on. When we understand that that is the process, these are not people fleeing persecution, we realize that the Human Rights Act does not apply to them. And we've got to do something sensible to stop the process. And the sensible thing to do to stop the process is to send them to a safe third country like Rwanda. And it's already been shown that can and will be effective.
Because we've got a situation again whereby he is adamant that a lot of people, a lot of blame can be put at the judge's feet in Britain, the liberal progressive establishment again, the delays that lawyers put in there, quite false delays, misusing, that's the right word, the law, documents, false documents. These are obvious to people, but certainly not the blob. It's the blob that we should tackle. Then the rest will follow up. There's many countries that are not as blessed as Britain, having offshore islands everywhere. There's nothing to stop us putting them on an island, obviously with suitable communication and infrastructure, but that's very easy to accommodate with all portable buildings, etc. these days. But the fact is, Sid, there's no political will. They don't want it. In other words, they want our country to be taken over. How many Marxists are in all this?
Well, yes and no. I think a lot of people don't really understand what's going on. You see, the law is all geared up to the idea that everyone coming over here is fleeing persecution and is coming over because they're desperate, and therefore we must be helping them. Now that is where the law is coming from. So because that is not true, that is not what's going on with these illegal immigrants, the law needs to be changed. And we need to address what is really going on and deal with it according to the truth of what is happening. And if we do that, then we'll make different laws. We'll get rid of the European Court of Human Rights. We'll realise that it's not an issue of human rights. This is something totally different that's going on. And we'll make correct decisions. We're not going to, by the way, start shooting the boats and shooting the people coming over. That's not the right approach. That's absolutely the wrong approach. But the right approach is to deal with every individual with love and care and compassion, but to realise and understand what is going on and to deal with it accordingly.
I think that was OTT. I don't think for 1 minute he recommends that people are shot. Obviously, they will be rescued from drowning when their boats are punctured, as an example. Finally, if this programme for everybody has made your blood boil, it's going to boil over now because of Cristiano Ronaldo. He's got the job of all jobs. And if you think football's down the pan, how about this pan? He's 40. He's got a 2-year contract. His pay is £500,000. Wait for it. A day. And bonuses on top of that. If that's not immoral, Sid, I don't know what is.
Well, frankly, I think when Ronaldo is past his best, he's no longer the footballer that he was 10 years ago, and he's living on his reputation now. But when he came to Manchester United, it became quite clear that he was no longer an asset to the team. So, paying him these ridiculous amounts is crazy. But if a football club wants to do it, it's up to them. And I guess it's only football clubs in Saudi Arabia that will do it, But...
Well, in that case, then we're all paying for it, aren't we, with our oil prices? Perhaps if we went to fracking and did it all ourselves, it would solve a lot of problems. We're not going to carry on, Sid. I'm being cruel to you and left you. We can mention it in a future programme. You're not a lover of our friend Cristiano, but like everything, we can love football, even though We play back to front these days, as we keep saying. Back to the goalkeeper. How many times last year, as an example, did you watch a football match? I did. And for the first time in my life, I regularly turned it off because I saw teams attacking. And obviously, it wasn't quite right. The ball didn't come over from the wing. So they played it back. And having been in position A, it finished up in the goalkeeper's hands in their own half. If that's playing out from the back, Sid, don't want to know.
Well, yes, but you see, increasingly, there's the pressing that's come into football, and I think it's very, very good because it's becoming harder just to play across the back. Because in the past, when teams would just defend in their own half, and you know and if the opposition had the ball, then they wouldn't go across the halfway line. Then you know it became quite boring football just watching players playing across the back and you know and just not doing very much and just controlling possession. But now that pressing has come in and you see pressing being very well organized. So even when they're in possession in their own half, they're under a lot of pressure, then I think it becomes very interesting football. And when a pressing team is successful and win the ball back in the opposition half or even in the opposition penalty area, it becomes very dangerous and they can easily score goals. So it's yeah, I think football now is a lot more exciting than it was when they were just playing across the back and the opposition team was staying in their own half.
Well, you must ignore the last minute of this conversation. He's got everything else right today, as he usually does. But when he talks football, I'm sorry. We've got to end this, Sid. We've run out of time. You wouldn't believe that, would you? And we look forward to more good quality political talk and less bad quality football for next week. See you next week, Sid.